Not all heroes wear capes, and not all stories of kindness make the headlines. But today I want to share with you a moment so simple, yet so profound, that it touched the hearts of millions. It's the story of a waitress, a young man, and a note that changed everything. Stay with me until the end, because this story might just remind you of the power of compassion and connection. The scent of espresso and freshly baked pastries lingered in the air as Dinah stood behind the counter of a small cafe, trying to push through another exhausting shift. It was one of those quiet afternoons when time seemed to crawl, and the weight of her worries felt heavier than usual. Rent was due in 2 days, her phone bill was overdue, and the tips that day had barely amounted to anything. She was tired, stressed, and wondering how she'd make ends meet. Dinah had been working at the cafe for over 2 years. It wasn't her dream job, but it kept the lights on. She had grown used to the routines, the early mornings, the long hours on her feet, and the occasional rude customer. But today felt harder. Her manager's earlier reminder about clocking overtime cuts lingered in her mind, adding to her already heavy heart. Still, Dinah kept a polite smile on her face, reminding herself that brighter days might be just around the corner. Just then, the bell above the cafe door jingled, pulling Dinah from her thoughts. She turned to see a young man walk in, tall and composed, dressed in a simple shirt and slacks. 2 men followed close behind, their sharp eyes scanning the room. Dinah froze for a moment, unsure of what to make of the unexpected guests. This wasn't the kind of place for high-profile visitors, let alone someone who seemed to have security. Gathering herself, Dinah approached the table where the young man had settled. She greeted him with a polite smile. "Good afternoon. Can I get you something to start?" The young man looked up, and Dinah felt a flicker of recognition. His face was strikingly familiar. It wasn't until he spoke, in a polite but reserved tone, that she realized who he was. Donald Trump. "I'll just have a cappuccino and maybe one of those croissants," he said, his words sincere and unassuming. "Absolutely. Anything else?" Dinah asked. He shook his head with a faint smile. "That'll be perfect. Thank you." Dinah jotted down the order, her heart still fluttering with surprise. As she prepared his drink, she couldn't help but glance back at the corner table. Donald sat quietly, gazing out the window, lost in thought. Unlike most patrons, he wasn't glued to his phone or a laptop. There was a calmness about him that felt out of place in her bustling world of noise and haste. As she placed the cappuccino and croissant on his table, their brief exchange of smiles felt strangely significant. It wasn't every day that someone as high profile as Donald Trump walked into her life, but in that moment, he was just a young man quietly enjoying a moment of peace. Minutes passed, and the cafe's rhythm returned. Dinah busied herself with her tasks, wiping tables, refilling sugar containers, and rearranging menus. Every so often, she glanced back at Donald's table. At one point, she noticed him pull a pen from his pocket. He scribbled something on the receipt, tucked it beneath the coffee cup, and stood up. He nodded politely in her direction before heading towards the door, his security detail following close behind. As the door closed behind him, Dinah exhaled slowly. She walked over to clear the table, expecting nothing out of the ordinary. But when she unfolded the receipt, her breath caught. Her eyes widened as she saw the tip, a sum so large it made her knees feel weak. 4 crisp digits. But it wasn't just the money that moved her. Above the total, there was a handwritten note. "Your kindness and hard work don't go unnoticed. My family has been where you are. Stay strong. Brighter days are coming." Dinah's hands trembled as she reread the words. Tears welled in her eyes, and she had to steady herself against the table. It wasn't just a tip or a kind note. It was a lifeline. A reminder that someone saw her struggles and cared enough to acknowledge them. In that moment, she felt something she hadn't felt in weeks: hope. The note wasn't just about generosity, it reflected an understanding that transcended their vastly different lives. Donald's words spoke to her as if he truly understood the weight she carried. Dinah's thoughts wandered as she clutched the note. Did his family really know what it was like to struggle? What stories did his parents pass down to him about their past? Whatever the case, his words and gestures resonated deeply. As the evening wore on, Dinah found herself reflecting on the power of kindness. She tucked the note safely in her pocket, and when her shift ended, she sat in her car for a long moment before starting the engine. It wasn't just the money that had given her hope, it was the simple act of someone recognizing her humanity in a world that often seemed too busy to notice. By the next day, the note had gone viral. A fellow customer had snapped a photo of it and shared it online, and social media was buzzing with praise for Donald's thoughtfulness. News outlets picked up the story, and people from all walks of life weighed in, applauding the young man's gesture and expressing curiosity about the waitress who had inspired it. Dinah, overwhelmed by the sudden attention, chose to stay out of the spotlight. For her, the note and the kindness behind it were deeply personal. Despite the whirlwind of media attention, Dinah found herself reflecting on the power of the moment. That single interaction, brief and unassuming, reminded her of the profound impact small acts of kindness can have. In her darkest days, someone had seen her and reminded her that brighter days were ahead, and she vowed to pay that kindness forward in her own way. Over the following weeks, Dinah became more intentional about her interactions with others. She noticed the people around her. The quiet souls sitting alone, the tired mothers with their kids, the elderly woman struggling to reach the counter. And she gave them a little more patience, a little more attention, because she understood now that everyone carries something with them, whether visible or not. Through it all, Dinah held onto that piece of paper as a reminder, a symbol of compassion, resilience, and the profound impact of small acts of kindness. It wasn't just the money that made a difference, it was the empathy and understanding behind it. For the first time in a long time, Dinah felt seen, valued, and hopeful for the brighter days promised in Donald's note. This story reminds us that even the smallest gestures can have the biggest impact. In a world that often feels rushed and disconnected, acts of kindness, no matter how small, can create ripples that reach far beyond what we can see. Dinah's story and Donald's heartfelt note are a testament to the power of empathy and the importance of lifting each other up, especially in times of struggle. So, I'll leave you with this question. Who will you lift up today? Thank you for watching, and if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that inspire. Until next time, remember, a little kindness goes a long way.